Is the men's ice hockey team the clear favorite in the ECAC? Does the women's basketball team need an elite scorer? And where does Jacob Rigoni rank among some men's basketball greats? All that and much more on this week's episode of Bobcat Breakdown. Welcome to Studio 125. My name is Heather Owen, and alongside me are Ross McGlynn and John Surratt, who are eager to debate. Guys, how are you?
Well, I'm doing great. Great to be with Ross on his first time on Q30. I know we debate all the time off air. Now it's time to get it on air with my guy Ross.
I know, it's not going to change much. We debate pretty often. It's normally pretty hot, but we'll keep it calm today.
Hopefully.
Let's get straight into it. Last week, Jacob Rigoni became the latest player to eclipse 1,000 career points, marking the fourth year in a row that a player on the men's basketball team has reached that milestone. So guys, where does Rigoni rank among those four players?
Well, among those four players would be Cam Young, Chase Daniels, and Rich Kelly. But at those four, I'm going to go with Jacob Rigoni at 4. Compared to the other guys, he is their senior leader this year, as we'll show the game winner from last year against Fairfield. But he is their senior leader, but he's mainly just a spot-up shooter. He's shown a little bit more ball handling. Just sometimes you feel like he could do a little bit more, but he did eclipse that 1,000 points. But just mainly just a spot-up shooter, and I can't really see him going above the other guys.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, he does have the best three-point percentage shooting out of the four guys on this list. So I think it is interesting. He's obviously the only one still as suited up as a Quinnipiac player, and he's on pace to pass Daniels in his career points by the end of this season. But like you said, he's a spot-up shooter. You don't see him go down low very often. He doesn't take many mid-range shots. So I think it's really interesting to put him at number 4. And where do you have him on? Who do you have on number 3?
Well, for me, I'm going to go with Chase Daniels. I wasn't here when he played, but just looking over his stats, he got 1,000 points, but as you mentioned, Rigoni will pass him a little bit, most likely. His best season was 13 points per game, but really just the team success overall wasn't really there, but his own personal game is just a little bit better than Rigoni's. He did have a little bit more potential, but just with the guys above him, with Kelly and Young, which I'll have next, I just can't put him above them.
Yeah, so that's where we're going to get our first little bit of disagreement. I put Kelly at number 3. Kelly, he's such an unselfish player. He could score 40 points or he could dish out assists. So it's really incredible because I think he had over 400 assists in his Quinnipiac career. So I think he's number 3 for me.
All right, well, then I'm just going to go with Rich Kelly because I think it's pretty obvious who we're going to have at number 1, but we'll talk about him later. But I'm going to go with Rich Kelly at number 2. I saw him really dominate, really go. He scored 40 points here and there, I guess, against his brother who played at Fairfield. And you just saw that team really offensively thrive with him on the court. He was their best point guard last year, years prior, and really just at his three-point efficiency, there was a reason he was able to transfer to Boston College and really have success there so far this year.
So number 2, I put Chase Daniels. I mean, you talked about him before. He had the best field goal percentage out of these guys, and he also had the most career rebounds out of these guys. So to have a guy that can both shoot and rebound is a real dual threat. And out of these 4 guys, that's the biggest threat. Really the closest to that right now on the Bobcats, I would say, is Seth Pinckney.
All right, well, I think it's pretty obvious who we have at number 1. It's going to be Cam Young, led SportsCenter, 50 points. It's pretty obvious. MAC Player of the Year. Can't really go wrong with that, and I'm going to assume.
Yeah, I mean, that's an undisputed fact. He had over 1,300 points in his career, so that's all I got.
Despite Rigoni's success, the men's basketball team is off to a slow start this season, sitting at 5-7. So Ross, how can they end their slow start and improve going forward?
So I think we've been saying this all year as men's beat reporters for the basketball team. They have to get the ball down low to Seth Pinckney more often. Not only is he 7'1" and they can throw alley-oops to him, but he can also shoot. He's an 80% shooter from the field. And to get a guy who's, again, 7'1" and can shoot from mid-range, that's one of the most dangerous duos in the game. And I think he could be really, really dangerous in the MAC if they give him the ball more often.
Yeah, well, you specifically pointed out a player. I'm going to specifically what I think the team, just overall, we've watched their games. When they're in the full court, they really excel offensively. Defensively, there's no problem. They're one of the best statistically with defensive field goal percentage, and blocks per game. But on the half-court sets, it really is hard to tell where, the ball, they don't really have that guy. So in the half-court, it's hard, especially with them struggling to shoot threes, which is really odd to see from some previous Quinnipiac men's basketball teams in years prior. So when you don't have that main guy and you're not shooting as well, it's really hard to have that great half-court offense. And just they turn the ball over way too much, lose that margin way too easily against other teams. So I think those are the two main aspects, really get better half-court sets and turn the ball over less.
Moving to the other side of the hardwood, the women's basketball team has been in a number of close games this year, including 3 that went to overtime. So John, what can they do to close out these tight games?
Well, Ross, recently they haven't been in a ton of close games, but prior, really what I think they got to do to close out some of the games that they had earlier in the year that I think they have been working on these past few games has been the turnover margin. Throughout, they beat teams through their field goal. They out-rebound teams. They out-playmake teams. You can go on and on, but once it comes down to the turnovers, that's where they struggle. And that's where sometimes that's when they start to lose. It's hard. They don't have that premier scorer, which we'll get to later. But with how the team is, I do think that they just need to work on that turnovers, especially once the MAC tournament starts up, to be able to compete against some of these MAC teams later on.
I agree. You definitely said it. They don't have that elite score, which we will get into it in a second. And I think 4 out of their 5 losses were within 3-point losses. And not having that elite score is tough. When you're losing games so close, and they do not shoot the 3 ball well. Just this Saturday, they were 1 for 18 from 3. And that's not really an outlier in their scoring. They've had games where they make 2 or 3 3-pointers a game. And overall, they're shooting 24% from 3. So they need to get the ball into mid-range areas, shots, and down low, because I think that's where they thrive on offense.
Trisha Fabri's squad has long relied on a balanced scoring attack, but in so many close games, is it time to find an elite scorer? John, let's start with you.
So I know we touched on it, but I don't think they do. Coach Fabry has really excelled with teams not needing a ton of high scoring. I know you weren't here, but with Jen Fay, Aaron McClure, on years teams prior that were really successful, the reason that they were winning MAC championships, hadn't lost MAC games in who knows how long until last season. But this season they still had success. Last season they had success. And I didn't really see, sure we can say Shaq Edwards, but I didn't really see her be such a top scorer because they've never really had a top scorer like you can see in other programs. So that's what I'm going to say. I don't think that they do, just because Coach Fabry and her squad has never had it, and they've always had success, especially in the MAC.
I'm going to go with yes, that they do need an elite scorer, just because what team doesn't want an elite scorer? You said Shaq a year ago averaged about 13 points per game. Then they relied on Taylor Hurd, who was about 10 points per game a year ago. And now it's Michaela Morris and Mackenzie DeWeese with 14 points per game and 12 points per game, and who just had her career high with 20 points on Saturday. So given an elite scorer who maybe gets, say, 15 points per game on an average, that would help any squad.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely would help any squad. I just don't know if, once it comes down to MAC tournament time, if when they're against these really good MAC squads, as they are, they don't. I don't see those other squads having one, and I don't think that they need one either. But it would definitely help. I just don't think they do need one to have success in the tournament or throughout the rest of their season.
I see it right now. They're fourth in the MAC after this weekend, and with an elite score, after say scoring 15 points a game, like I had said, if they with those 4 out of their 5 losses being 3-point losses, if that elite scorer put them over the edge, you could argue they'd be undefeated up to this point.
Well, you saw just recently they've been defeating teams pretty handedly, and I think that they figured it out, and they don't have the premier score. But either way, we'll definitely see once it comes down to later on in the season in the MAC tournament.
Absolutely.
All right, it is time for our first break, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll shift from the hardwood to the ice. Stay with us. Welcome back to Bobcat Breakdown. Thank you for staying with us. The Quinnipiac men's ice hockey team currently sits atop ECAC hockey with 23 points. With just 6 games left, are they the clear favorite to win the conference?
Well, I guess I'll start. And just recently, news-wise, Clarkson's program, both women's and men's ice hockey, are on pause. So we'll see how their seasons do play out later on. But if say they aren't in the picture, I'm gonna have to say Quinnipiac is the favorite in the ECAC hockey standings wise. Colgate, St. Lawrence, those teams just don't compete well with. We just saw this past weekend. Quinnipiac dominated St. Lawrence, and they really they're up 4 points on Clarkson and up 8 on the other two. So I don't see those other two teams really competing against Quinnipiac. Clarkson, on the other hand, could, but if their season does not takes a turn for a worse, then I don't. That's the only team I could really see. But if there's no Clarkson, I really do think that this team's the favorite in the ECAC hockey.
Yeah, I agree. Quinnipiac is definitely the favorite in the ECAC. They're just such a dominant team, and they're so far this year they've been great on the penalty kills, holding their opponents just a 13% conversion rate. That's unbelievable, and they've done pretty well incorporating the young guys. This weekend we saw Christoph Filion, part of a great trio, combining for 6 points with Lombardi and Fawcett, and of course the young guy, Ty Spolanek. I mean, 11 goals in 20 games, that's as good as it gets. And he has lived up to the hype so far for the men's hockey team.
Yeah, definitely. I think, once you look down to it, the only teams that they've really competed hard against with has been Clarkson. Went to overtime in 4 games, or 3-3 against them on this season. But the other 2, they really dominate. They only have 1 loss to St. Lawrence throughout the season. So I do think once it comes down time to the season being over, Quinnipiac will easily have the ECAC hockey lead.
Keith Petruzzelli and Odin Tufto were recently named candidates for the Hobie Baker Award as 2 of the best players in the nation. So guys, who do you think is more impactful to this team?
Well, I started first, so you.
I'll take this one. So I'm going to go with Petruzzelli on this one. He picked up his second Goaltender of the Week award, and he ranks second in the nation with 12 wins and 4 shutouts so far this year. And he's having a career year. There's no doubt about it. Less games in the season, so the stats don't really match up, obviously, from a year ago. But so far in 20 games, he's allowed just 34 goals, as compared to last year with 34 games, allowing 66 goals. So I don't know how that adds up, to be honest. But he's allowed 1 goal or fewer in 7 of his last 8 games. And with 4 shutouts, that's tough to debate.
You know, I am going to debate it. I'm going to go with Odin Tufto, especially just because it's just this award is more towards skaters, forwards, but like Tufto is the reason that their offense thrives, with leading the country in assists. Really helps elevates the offense to heights that they don't really could get to. I perceive, but say Petruzzelli was not in front of the net. I think their defense could stand tall with someone else back there, but with Tufto, he's really the main cog for their offense that I believe in. So that's why I think once it comes down to it, Tufto's the leader. If we had to pick between the 2, I do think Tufto at the end of the day is going to get it, just because it's more leaning towards him for the awards. He has 29 points on the season and 25 assists. Crazy statistics there, but when it comes down to it, I think Keith Petruzzelli and the defense really helps him thrive, while Odin sets up the whole offense for the men's ice hockey team.
Shifting gears to the women's side, sophomore forward Kenzie Hosworth recently transferred to Ohio State University, leaving the Bobcats with a hole at the forward position. So Ross, I'll ask you, who needs to step up?
Well, this is a tough question. I mean, there's a lot of people that have stepped up throughout the year. First year, Nina Steigoff, she's really stepped up so far this year. We'll look to see if she can keep up with her performance she's had so far. 2 goals, 3 assists, and played in every game so far. So if she can stick with it and keep up her pace, then I think the Bobcats will be okay.
Well, I'm going to kind of go away from that question. I don't think really, the team's had a ton of success so far this season, and she hasn't really made an impact this year. Only 4 points on the season, Kenzie Hosworth saying, and only 7 last year. She does go to Ohio State, but the team, she just based off how the teams are performing, she hasn't seemed like she's led the team to success this year. So I don't think anyone really needs to step up more. Her presence, I don't feel is going to be missed if she's not there. So I don't think when it comes down to it, Kenzie Ellsworth no longer being there is going to impact this team. I think they're going to still have success in ECAC hockey.
On top of Hosworth, the Bobcats have had some notable injuries on defense, including their captain, Olivia Conningson. So John, with all these injuries, is defense going to be an issue down the stretch?
Well, I was talking with women's ice hockey beat reporter Ethan Logue, and really just the team, they've had a lot of success on defense so far, but really there are 2 teams that they struggle with are Clarkson and Colgate, the other teams that they've really dominated. But when they allow 3 or more goals, they lose. In all of their losses so far, they've allowed 3 or more goals. So when their defense is there, they have success. So I don't think, and with this team, Ethan was saying that they've had a lot of forwards play defense for them this year, and really, if you're gonna have people out and those forwards are stepping up, if you had real defenders out there, their defense would be able to step up And I don't think once it comes down to it, at the end of the year, that their defense is going to struggle.
Yeah, I don't think defense is going to be a liability for this team at all because they have the goaltender depth that is so big. They have Logan Ayers, 8 games, 12 goals allowed. That's 93% save percentage, which is incredible. And then behind her is Katie Boudier, 4 games, 0 goals allowed. That's 4 shutouts, 100% save percentage. I didn't need to say that. And as a team, they hold their opponents to about 19 shots per game while shooting around 48. So that's setting yourself up for success while holding your team's success to a minimum.
Yeah, I definitely, when they only have 6 more games left against those teams, Clarkson and Colgate, as long as Clarkson does keep playing. So I do think, those are the 2 teams that they've struggled with, but I do think that they've found something recently with their defense. And once those games come up on their schedule, they'll be able to figure it out. Even though they've struggled with them, I think they'll figure it out on defense, and their offense will still be able to keep them in and keep them winning games.
Time for another quick break, but do not go anywhere. When we come back, it's time for Final Roars.
One in 3 adults has pre-diabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your favorite brother, your other brother, you, your football buddy, your football buddy, you, the boss's boss. If 1 in 3 adults has pre-diabetes, that means it could be you, your barber, your barber's barber.
Nice work.
Thanks.
You, your plumber,
Breathe right into your foot.
your plumber's masseuse.
Yes.
You, your dog walker,
On your left.
your cat jogger. Or you, your co-pilot, your co-pilot's co-pilot. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org to know where you stand.
Welcome back to Bobcat Breakdown. Thanks for staying with us. Before we get to our final roar, it is time we look back at our QBSN Game of the Week. In tonight's Game of the Week, we take you back a little over a full year ago on February 7th, 2020. The Quinnipiac men's ice hockey team was playing the first leg of the Battle of Whitney Ave, and it did not disappoint. The Bulldogs got on the board first as they scored just 55 seconds into the game. The Bobcats would take the lead back in the third period. However, with 2 goals from Alex Whalen and Joe O'Connor, Yale kept things interesting, scoring late in the third period to send it to overtime. But the extra time was all Quinnipiac as O.D. Tufto netted the game winner just 18 seconds into sudden death. The game marked the Bobcats' 3rd consecutive win and 11th win in 13 games. So, what are your guys' thoughts on the game?
Well, that's the Yale-Quinnipiac rivalry. That's as good as it gets in hockey. Joe O'Connor, obviously the game-tying goal to send it into overtime, and it's quite the memorable game.
Yeah, definitely. It also helped spark some momentum for the men's ice hockey team. Just later on into the season, even though they weren't able to finish it, it definitely helped, especially against big rival Yale that they beat earlier in the year. So definitely something that helped them on throughout that year.
Yeah, the rivalry is something that we won't get to see in person this year, obviously, in the People's United Center, but it's always something to get excited about.
Yeah, definitely. It's such an atmosphere, such a just a game you want to be at, even if you don't root for either team. It's just the atmosphere, the excitement that you have at a Yale Quinnipiac game is something you want to be at.
All right, no more waiting. It is time for Final Roars. Ross, take it away.
All right, so as we talked about earlier this evening, in order to bring things down, or in order to pick things up down the stretch for the Quinnipiac men's basketball team, they need to get the ball into the hands of Seth Pinckney on offense. And taking more threes should be a priority, whether they pull the trigger themselves or they form the offense from beyond the arc. This team does not have the three-point caliber shooters they had a year ago. Last year, they had a team that shot 869 three-point shots in 30 games, averaging 10 made a game. This year, they are well under that mark, averaging only 6 per game. As the season has progressed, it is clear that there are some three-point threats, and they need to find the net moving forward. Jacob Rigoni, junior Tyrese Williams, and first-year Tymer Shinnery lead the Bobcats from deep, but they can't do it alone. Let's not forget that if the threes do not fall, then a 7'1" Seth Pinckney will be there ready to grab a rebound with a second chance on offense. We have seen this work time and time again for the Bobcats, even just going back to last year as Kevin Marfo grabbed in the most rebounds in the nation, and Rich Kelly was a sharp shooting threat. If the Bobcats can get back into the blueprint they have used so successfully, they will no doubt be a contender as the MAC tournament approaches.
Speaking of the MAC tournament, don't look now, but the MAC basketball and ECAC hockey tournaments are starting up in about a month. Time has flown by during the winter sports season, with only a few more games for the Quinnipiac basketball and hockey teams all over the country. Conferences will start their conference tournaments as well, and then the NCAA tournaments will start. Also in the NBA, originally there was no All-Star game planned, but after some discussions on March 7th, there will be an All-Star game. However, as these teams get ready for tourney time and players get ready for the All-Star game, I question, is it even worth it to have those events? For all of these large gatherings of teams and players across college and professional sports, there's a lot of discussion from players and coaches that they worried and scared what's to come. And there is reason for their concern. A ton of teams around the country have had a long stoppage of play or even their canceled seasons entirely. In the MAC, Iona men's basketball has not played since December 23rd, and Siena women's basketball canceled the rest of their season. In the Pac-12, UCLA men's basketball head Coach Mick Cronin was quoted saying, "I'm very uncomfortable on having the Pac-12 tournament." In the NBA, many stars like LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and De'Aaron Fox have spoken of being disappointed that there be an All-Star game played, with people of power really sharing their discomfort, and with so many other variables that come into play. I want the NBA and conferences across the country to really ask themselves, is it really worth it?
Earlier in the show, we asked the question, are the Quinnipiac men's ice hockey team the clear favorites in ECAC hockey? Well, in my opinion, the answer to that question is yes. I believe that the Bobcats proved that they are the favorites with their impressive win Saturday night against the St. Lawrence Saints. This was the Bobcats' 4th game against St. Lawrence, and they had a lot to prove considering they came into the weekend in a tie for first in ECAC hockey with Clarkson. The Saints' Emil Zetterquist made it difficult for the Bobcats to score, making 45 saves in total. But that did not stop an impressive Quinnipiac defense from finding the back of the net. Being able to come back and win a game while shooting against such a powerhouse goalie like Zetterquist, who's made 347 saves this season, is proof in itself that the Bobcats are the team to beat this year. But if you need more convincing, then it is easy to find. The Bobcats are a top 15 team in the nation, with 2 Hobie Baker candidates and a first-year standout that leads the team in goals. 6 games is a lot of hockey, but make no mistake, the Bobcats are the team to beat in ECAC hockey. Well, that is going to do it for tonight's show. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check us out on our website, q30tv.com, and the qbsn.com on social at Q30 TV and at QBSN, and of course, on our new Q30 app. For Ross, John, and everyone behind the scenes, I'm Heather Owen. Have a wonderful night.